Thank you, Chris. And now I am pleased to bring you a conversation with two of the Washington State 2017 Regional Teachers of the Year. Washington State Regional Teacher of the Year, Kendra Yamamoto, serves as teacher mentor for all newly hired kindergarten teachers for Vancouver Public Schools. She's a preschool teacher at King Elementary and coordinator for the Jump Start Kindergarten program for all 21 Vancouver elementary schools. Kendra is determined to provide high-quality learning experiences for our earliest learners. While her Title I preschool program is filled this past fall, creating a long wait list of children who would not have an opportunity for a pre-K experience, Kendra created an evening preschool program called King's Early Explorers. In order to offer this program, Kendra secured funding to employ support staff and purchase materials and food. Today, children attend a weekly 3-hour preschool program that is rich in rigor and routine. Kendra also publishes a monthly electronic newsletter called Early Learning in Vancouver, which translates into Spanish and Russian and provides timely information about opportunities to support early child development. The newsletter has become a critical communication tool and has increased participation in parent-child enrichment programs. Kendra inspires children and adults. Please welcome Kendra Yamamoto. She also did do a blistering op-ed in the Olympian last week, so I thank you for that too, in case you didn't see it. Just Google Kendra Yamamoto and the Olympian, it'll come right up. 2017 Washington Regional Teacher of the Year Elizabeth Loftus is a board-certified behavior analyst who teaches students with emotional and behavioral disorders, EBD. Her introduction to special education was in New York, where she taught 7th and 8th graders at a school near a prison. From these kids, Elizabeth learned about some of the 2 common obstacles to learning: poverty, gangs, and abuse. What they learned from her is that somebody cared. Today, Elizabeth teaches EBD students in Oak Harbor, a Navy community with another set of challenges. Elizabeth strives to create community not just in her classroom, but among parents, families, and caregivers too, because parents of special needs children often feel isolated. Elizabeth's principal praises her ability to build the kind of trusting and non-adversarial relationships that can be life-changing for both her students and the adults who care for them. The issue that Elizabeth sees as most critical beyond all others is the severe lack of mental health systems and supports in our public schools. Her kids are autistic, bipolar, suffer from PTSD, Tourette's, OCD, oppositional defiance disorder, and anxiety. Elizabeth comes to work to smile, laugh, cry, raise her voice, whisper, share her apples, talk in silly accents when she teaches math. And she shows up because she knows that she may be the only person in a child's day who makes sure that he or she feels special and loved. Please welcome Elizabeth Loftus. Our moderator this morning is Daniel Zavala, LEV's Director of Policy and Government Relations. Daniel is a Washington native with family on both sides of the mountains. His path to policy work was shaped by his parents' backgrounds in education and social justice. Thank you, Daniel's parents. We really like him. His career started in the classroom as a bilingual special education teacher. After finishing his bachelor's, master's degrees at Stanford University, as a teacher for students with special needs, he saw firsthand the intersection of law and policy in the classroom. After teaching, Daniel earned his law degree at the University of Washington, focusing on education issues and working with education groups and the Washington State Attorney General's office in the education division. Did you work with Rob McKenna when he was AG?
Not directly with him.
Not directly. Well, Rob's sitting right there.
Purview, yeah.
After law school, Daniel worked for Students First on state-level policy and most recently served as Deputy Director of Tennessee CAN. When not on campus or in Olympia, Daniel spends his free time exploring the many natural wonders of the Evergreen State and training for Ironman triathlons. Please welcome Daniel Zavala.
Well, thank you for those kind words, Eric. And if anything, wonderful people that I get to be up here with. And really, this is meant to be kind of a conversation to talk about the experience of teaching and what it's like to be in the classroom, how the policies that we advocate for impact the everyday lives of the educators that we are working on behalf of and to serve. So I'll kind of just start with, both Kendra and Liz, just tell us about day one. What was it like?
The first day of teaching ever.
First day of teaching ever.
So all I can compare it to is those of you with kids, and specifically your firstborn, where you have a plan of what that first year birthday party is going to look like, right? And you have the invitations, and you have the outfit picked out, and you have your class. So compare it to the classroom world. You have your classroom set up, you have the decorations out, and you are ready with your smile, and you're showered, and it's going to be perfect. And then your 1-year-old, right, just doesn't go along with that plan. That's what your first day of teaching. At least that's what my first day of teaching was like. Nothing went to plan, although it was all very coordinated and well-meaning. And at the end of the first day, I remember thinking, what in the heck just happened here? Same with my first child's first birthday party, where there's cake everywhere. I think he passed out after possibly wetting through several pairs of pants. And that was my life as a first grade teacher, my first day. And I went, what have I gotten myself into?
I would say it's pretty accurate to that, the description. I was terrified. I think I had this vision of what special education was going to look like. My grandfather's a principal, my aunts are teachers, my mom's worked with special needs population my entire life growing up, and I had this, it's going to be fun and wonderful, and it was probably the most terrifying single day of my life. And, I keep showing up every day, so I must like it. But nothing prepares you, even your student teaching program, for having your own classroom and working with your own students, because all of a sudden you're in charge. So it's interesting.
Yeah. So Liz, you kind of mentioned on the student teaching programs, right? The preparation programs to get you ready for day one. So one of the things that Eric mentioned, right, is this statement that came out of the White House in 2014 about 75% of teachers feeling inadequately prepared from their preparation programs for the classroom. And so based off of the colleagues that you have in your schools within the districts you're sitting, as well as the mentees that you oversee, why do you think that is? Why do you think so many teachers feel inadequately prepared?
I think in my experience, you pick your university as an 18-year-old and you go to school somewhere that you're excited to be, and you do this wonderful program. And my own program was wonderful. I went to college in Ohio, so far away from here, and New York. And it was great, and I did great student teaching and had great experiences. But the school that I got hired to work in was nothing like where I went to college and nothing like where I student taught. And you don't really get to pick and choose those experiences. And so I remember my sister calling me on the first, she's a teacher as well, the first day teaching. She's like, I don't even know how to pronounce these names on my class list. And she was just in a total panic. So I think where you live, where you grow up, where you go to school may or may not prepare you for the population and the community that you're going to teach in. And that's just something that you have to experience and kind of just jump into and get yourself used to. But I think that's one of the big challenges for anybody starting teaching. You don't know what you're going to get when you get your first job. So.
Yeah, your student teaching experience doesn't necessarily, and in most cases, doesn't often reflect the reality of the classroom that you're walking into. When I'm not teaching preschool, I mentor new teachers to our school district, and repeatedly I see them coming in saying, so I did my student teaching in 4th and 5th grade, I did a practicum in middle school, and they hired me for kindergarten. And when you're in an interview situation, you're saying, yeah, I can do that. Sure, that sounds great. I love kids. I'll show up. Yeah. Oh, it's a high poverty school. Yeah, I can do that. And then really that first day, you go, I have no idea what I've gotten myself into, because the preparation piece does look so different in the college program compared to the reality of what teaching is day in and day out.
Yeah.
Even when you have a strong program.
Yes.
Because I came from a very strong program too. I think getting the best mentor teachers out there to work with your student teachers pays tenfold in the future. Because if you do not have the strength of a strong, high quality mentor teacher, you were so unprepared heading into those first few years of teaching.
Absolutely agree. I think if anything, go ahead. And sometimes those mentors don't necessarily other educators, your principals. I remember I leaned really heavily on my paraprofessional to help me learn the ropes, right? And often it's other people who are within the system that can provide that assistance. So one of the, keeping with the theme, I suppose, of inadequacy or feelings of adequacy in preparation, right? One of the things that Chris alluded to was a Washington Supreme Court decision called McCleary that talked about the adequacy of funding within our state around education. And so, right now, the legislature has before it the opportunity to take action in this debate, in this discussion, in this mandate. And so when we think about what's happening in Olympia, part of that conversation trickles down to what is the impact of what the state is doing around education funding in the classroom. And so if you can speak about, whether positively or negatively, how has funding streams impacted, either your ability or other educators that ability to do their job well?
Well, I think for me in Oak Harbor, we're a Navy community, and so quite a few of our parents and families, they don't contribute to the levies because it's not their registered home state. So we rely really heavily on funds from the federal government to supplant what we do in our community. And I want to say 6-7 years ago, there was sequestering, and so we were all of a sudden just out of funds, and we didn't have enough paraprofessionals to work with some really challenging students in my classroom in particular. And I remember having 14, 15 emotionally and behaviorally disabled students, and they're like, here's your 2 paraprofessionals. I was like, that's not enough people. Well, how are we gonna do everything? Because, it's this one-room schoolhouse for me. I teach 3 or 4 grades. We have kids upset or kids that need extra help, and there's never enough bodies. And so we had to really work hard to pass our levy a few years ago, and when we did that, all of a sudden we had funding for enough paraprofessionals and materials, and if you've never seen a fidget, they're amazing, but they cost money. And so when we have the funds to get those things, when I can call up my special ed director and say, I need this, can we do it? And she can say yes, we both feel great about it. But there's been years where the answer was no, we're out of money. So I think fully funding education for me means I have adequate staff, adequate training, my students have all the resources and materials they need to be successful, and nobody leaves frustrated well, sometimes we leave frustrated and upset no matter what, but ideally, we don't leave feeling like we haven't done enough.
Mm-hmm. I've seen the funding positively impact within the district of just creating mentoring programs. So Vancouver is one in the state that assigns a mentor to brand new teachers, and they carry all school year, and then we just got something called the BEST grant. So now we have 2 years of full mentoring, and so that's something that I've seen really positively impact through funding. In addition to that, just professional development time and those dollars, so that teachers who are saying, I student taught in 4th and 5th grade, I really want to learn more about the early learning and child development, so they can take those funds and say, I can actually take classes with those to get to know more about this specific area. I also think just the funds within building the community. So in teacher lingo, it's called PLCs, which are our personal learning communities, and taking the time with those new teachers to get to know them and building that community within a team and within a school. So I think there's, it's always a question of, is there enough money? I think in the end, the community and the teachers end up emptying their pockets and contributing, because we all want success for our kids. It would be great if education was fully funded every year, so we weren't like begging in December for crayons or looking for that Target half-off sale, which is constantly on our radar as teachers. So I think just the ongoing positive supports of funding are there. We just constantly need those resources to be there and not a question mark.
Absolutely. So staying on this line about kind of adequate resources, support from the state, a lot of the recommendations or thoughts you have about this really can translate to all schools across the state, right? But one of the things I want to dig into, right, are the hard to staff schools, the hard to staff subject areas like special education. And so what can the state be doing to actually support kind of getting our best and brightest and most effective teachers in those hard to staff areas in schools?
Well, I think for me, when I started teaching EBD in Oak Harbor 7-8 years ago, I think it was, I had 5 students, and now there's 26 students in our program, and we went from 1 classroom to 3. So we like quadrupled, I think, if I am doing my math correctly. But for numbers to grow so huge in such a short amount of time is just overwhelming. And then I just totally spaced out. Can you redirect me?
Yeah, what the state can
Not
be
enough
doing
coffee.
to.
State could be doing.
Yeah.
So I would really appreciate the state looking at better training for my paraprofessionals.
Yes.
And my paras are wonderful, amazing people that don't get paid enough for what I ask them to do day in and day out, but they are thirsty for the training and the knowledge that we have as teachers, and they don't get it. And if they do, it's because someone borrowed, from Peter to pay Paul to get them to this training that they really need. And there's only so much I can do in the school day to help them work through whatever we're learning that day. So I really wish for me that my paraprofessionals had more support in that area. And for my particular students that have a wide range of social and emotional needs, we have to beg, borrow, and steal to get them counseling supports at school. Our school counselor sees every kid in the building, and that's not enough for my students. So if we could look at more actively placing school social workers, community counselors, I think that would go really far to helping especially my low-income students that can't access those things out in the community themselves. If we could provide that in a safe place like our school, we could do a lot of good.
Yeah, I piggyback all of that. I especially want to stress the professional development for paraprofessionals. These people are coming up and making sometimes minimum wage, and they really do, like Chris spoke to, they have the toughest job, and they come every single day, and they need to be trained. They are hands-on with those kids often, and so it's quite unfair that we're not giving them adequate training.
Well, so perhaps stepping away and thinking about some, more lighthearted questions. So thinking about your particular classrooms, your school environments right now, if you could reimagine what your classroom would look like, what would it be?
Well, I actually had the unique opportunity last spring I was invited by an architecture firm to spend a week with the architects and work side by side with them. And it was an amazing experience. I realize not every teacher, probably not every person, will ever have that opportunity, but they wanted to design schools through a teacher's lens. And I'm just not a teacher, I'm also a parent, so they wanted the parent-teacher lens, and it was an amazing opportunity to sit and design elementary schools, and then take those designs and share them with the community in Vancouver, Washington, where I live, and have discussions with community members as to why these are effective models as a teacher and as a parent. So I would say one takeaway from that, what I saw repeatedly on all the designs that I was working with the architects doing, was just having my large preschool room with the natural light, and also right next to a family resource center. So in Vancouver, we pair those in our schools. We try to, depending on the room. But it's a center where if families need clothes, if they need counseling, if they need food, we have Trader Joe's who comes in twice a week and just gives us all of their extra food so parents can go shopping. It's a place where families can go to feel safe and get help. And the idea of dropping off their littlest learners right next door and having a resource center for them is time and time again what I was pushing for in these designs. So that would be my one push, is to bring the community into our schools.
Ditto. That sounds amazing. We don't have that in Oak Harbor. So a lot of my students come from really poor. I have a student named Blake. I love him. He's wonderful. He's living in a pop-up camper in his grandpa's front yard with his dad and his two brothers, who are much bigger than him. And they have to walk in to grandpa's house to take a shower in the morning. So we had to fight, and he comes to school not clean, hungry. Every day we have breakfast waiting for our students in the classroom when they get there. But I had to fight to get a washer-dryer so that we could wash their clothes, so that they could, the self-confidence that a student has when they're clean. I mean, you wouldn't think it's a big deal because little boys are dirty and awful sometimes, but,
Not you. Not you.
No. You look great, and I love your sweatshirt. But sometimes boys are dirty. But the confidence that he feels when he's got a clean shirt on and shoes that aren't falling apart is huge. And being able to advocate for, we need a washer dryer, and we're teaching him self-care skills by doing your own laundry. And he goes around to all the classrooms, does anybody need anything clean today? And it's great. And he can operate a washing machine long before my 30-year-old brother could. So I think that's really powerful. But I shouldn't have to beg for that for my students. It shouldn't be something that took us 4 or 5 years to get, and it shouldn't feel like an inconvenience. It should be available. I wish we had the resource center right near our school. That would be amazing. So I'm going to have to go back and say something to somebody who will maybe do something about it.
And if you're able to have clean clothes, right, and you're
Yeah.
able to eat, and you're able to get help with your electricity bill, or you don't have housing, once those basic needs are met, that's when the kids can start learning. If those basic needs aren't met, those kids are not ready to learn.
So well said. Absolutely agree, as does everyone else. So you both were awarded the Regional Teacher of the Year, and so if you could just kind of, why do you think that is?
So,
Well,
you know, so I'm really nervous. I don't know if you could see my feet, like.
Or maybe you could speak to why Kendra got it.
But Kendra got it because
Oh.
she's amazing. But I think we, and Camille, hi, you're over there somewhere. I think all of us were like, why were we chosen? I don't think we look for this kind of recognition, and in fact, it makes us very uncomfortable sometimes. But I think my principal was the one that nominated me, and I remember getting the email, and I said, I think I got some spam in my email inbox, and she was like, well, no, I was like, for what? Like, I don't think I even knew it was a thing, because I'm so busy doing my job every day. And so I was like, okay, and there was this like big long essay and letters, and it was, I think she just understood that the niche little classroom I'm in a little tiny Oak Harbor, she wanted me to feel recognized and important, where we get overlooked very often. And so I was just really grateful for that. It's an amazing spotlight for my special ed program, this year of recognition, they call it. But I don't know. I mean, she says she's proud and does a great job, and I feel like I work hard, but there's amazing teachers in my building that deserve the honor just as much. So it's hard to say.
you're pretty excellent, though, Liz.
Oh,
I
thank you.
think, it is something that we've all struggled with, because we're like, no, not us. We just want to show up and teach and look away. And then I think after a while, you start to realize that rather than accepting it as who you are as being a teacher of the year, it's more your platform in which you stand on. And I think, so my platform is early learning, and I think that it's of such great importance that I like to think that my platform was nominated and given this opportunity to travel and speak to others and just speak to the need for early learning. So I was talking to my best friend last night about this, and to think that how embarrassing it is, right, to be in the United States where we have all these riches and all this power, and yet we don't have early learning in our systems. To have preschool for all means for all, in my mind. Birth to age 5, 90% of brain growth occurs. We are waiting too late to catch these kids before kindergarten hits, and we're running to catch up, and we're seeing that repeatedly. And so my mission this year, and it will continue to be, is just to spread the word of whether I'm Teacher of the Year and I need to be the face of that, really it's my platform that I hope is speaking out to everyone just for that need for early learning. It is critical, and it needs to be done now.
Thank you for that. So I want to leave everyone with, at least in our conversation, with something hopeful, and certainly that is hopeful, right? An ask for special education, early learning to be paramount in our education system. Teaching is incredibly challenging. I remember every single day I would go home wondering what I had done and whether I had made a difference, and if anything, wondering even more whether I could make any impact the next day. You've got this set of students for such a short period of time and an incredibly monumental task to get them prepared or caught up or just on track. And so I ask, right, with that challenging and daunting task, at the same time as rewarding as it is, right, when you do have those small and big wins, what is it that keeps you going in every day?
I think it's my kids. They're goofy and weird and funny, and when I'm not there, they freak out. Like, how long are you gonna be gone? And it's really kind of a beautiful thing. My mom always talks to me about planting seeds, and hopefully at some point you can see them grow. And sometimes I do, and sometimes I don't. In the short time that I have, I wait and have a student come back and visit me a few years later and tell me, you know, what my impact was on their life, and that they're still trying and they haven't given up. And I think that's really meaningful for me. But my students right now are just the most hilarious, you know, funny kids, and they're misunderstood. And so I think that's, if I can give them a voice in my school. Our program's called Choices, and oftentimes other teachers, oh, it's the Choices kids. And you're just like, oh gosh, like these are wonderful kids that just are struggling with something that you might not fully understand. And so the thing that keeps me going back every day is giving them a voice and making sure that when they're ready, they can access general education and they have the social emotional learning they need. And that's my platform. Lyon Terry, our state teacher of the year from 2015, is a real champion of the social emotional learning goals in Washington State. And I couldn't be more excited and thrilled that we're pushing that through, because I believe not only my students, but every child needs that kind of support and growth. So I think that's what keeps me coming back every day, that I can help them reach that potential.
Yeah, excuse me. I think even after a really, excuse me, long, hard day, which we have a lot of, you know, our job is one of the few that you can show up the next day and do it all over again, and you open that door and these kids come running in with these smiles. And you know, I teach preschool, so often they're jumping and they're going in for the hug, sometimes the kiss. You know, they're just so excited to be there, and I think that excitement keeps me coming back. As far as a story that I keep in the back of my mind, every year I do a lottery pick for the slots in my preschool. And I call the parents and say, oh, so-and-so was picked. And so I have this quote above my desk. So the short story to that is, I called a gentleman and I said, hi, I'm Kendra Yamamoto. I'm calling to let you know that your Avalon was selected from the lottery. And then I just hear the phone drop and screaming. And I thought, what is happening? And there's hooping and hollering. And I was like, oh my God, he thinks he won the actual lottery. He heard lottery and thinks, and now I have to, oh God, I've got to tell him they didn't win the lottery. So he gets on the back of the phone. I said, Frank, sir, so just to be clear, I'm calling from Martin Luther King Elementary. So your daughter, Avalon, got in through the lottery to my preschool program. And I said, you didn't win the actual lottery. And he said to me, so this is a quote I have by my desk, this is better than winning the lottery. You just gave my daughter an education. So that drives us. That drives us.
It's a good motivator. Well, I want to thank you both for the time you provided us and sharing your personal experience, and I think it really does translate to what a lot of teachers are experiencing across the state. So if we can give them a round of a hand.
Thank you.